Hey Ty, how you doing?
Hey, well, Black in America, you know.
Yeah, I get it. Well, I don't get it, but I get it. you know. Um, so I'm so glad you decided to do this. Those of us who work with you are so in awe of your skills and your passion that I just wanted to share it out there, with those who read our newsletter. And I'm excited to, ask you a few questions and see what you're about.
Well, I have an LLC. I started it actually in the middle of COVID. I had been doing this work way before, but hey, I mean, why not, right? So I started an LLC and it's called Left Turn Village. And it's a public health and social justice consulting and training company. And my background is in public health. So I have my doctorate in public health from Rutgers University in health education and behavioral sciences. And before that, I did my master's in public health. And when I was at Wellesley, I was a biology and sociology major, bio major, sociology minor. There, that's what I'm trying to say. Um, and so in my when I graduated youth, so I was really interested in working with urban Black and brown youth. So when I went to Rutgers and I started working at this nonprofit, it happened to be a pride center, but it was in the middle of Jersey City, this urban area. So again, the population that I wanted with respect to Black and brown urban youth, um, but they also happen to be members of the community, of the LGBTQ community. And so just like continuing to learn more about the intersections of race and gender and class and all those other things, just really like I kind of threw myself into that work because you start to see all of the inequities, all of the disparities that people face, and these are avoidable, right? These are things that don't have to be in existence. So I started really focusing on trying to educate people, trying to educate educators, educating administrators, medical and social service providers, healthcare providers, mental health providers, um, law enforcement, just really trying to drive home this understanding and cultural competency of understanding the different communities that people are working with, and understanding how to communicate effectively, and getting people to realize that just because one thing works for one group, it doesn't necessarily mean that it works for everybody. And even if one thing worked for one person in one group, does not mean that you can then expand it, right, and extend it to everybody else in that group. Um, and so with my background being in public health, there's a lot of health inequities that are on the rise. Well, not even on the rise, but just that exist. Um, I mean, we see it with COVID, but even before COVID, I mean, the reason why COVID is affecting the people that it's affecting is because of these pre-existing circumstances and conditions, right? And with public health, the reason why I'm doing a whole lot of social justice stuff is because you cannot have public health without social justice. They go hand in hand, right? So that's why I started Left Turn Village, because I married, well, not that I married social justice and public health, because again, they were already dating, they were already in bed together, having this entity, this vehicle, which will help to bring people into the fold and hopefully alleviate a lot of the issues that are leading to these problems. This is going to sound kind of corny, but you know what, whatever, I'm a cornball, I admit it. So a long time ago, when I was learning how to drive, I was like, what, 17 years old, 18 years old. My driving instructor, he had this saying, he's like, as far as when it comes to work, your life's work, figure out what you love doing and then figure out a way to get somebody to pay you to do it. And that's stuck with me all these years. Like, I'm not driven by money, but that's not what motivates me to get out of bed. What motivates me to get out of bed, what motivates me to make it through the day is doing the work that I do. Because again, I love doing this. I love my job. I love helping others. I love educating people. I love creating these workshops. I love seeing those little light bulb moments when people are like, Oh, I see how that can be racist. Oh, yeah, I see how that can be transphobic. Oh, oh, I see why that's kind of ableist, you know? So I really enjoy helping people come to those realizations and then helping them figure out how to change their behaviors, helping them to change their thinking, helping them um, to make whatever tweaks that they need to do in their personal and professional lives to make places, spaces, works, work, healthcare, education, to whatever the field, whatever the area, whatever the space, to make it more inclusive and equitable, not just diverse, but inclusive and equitable. And that's really what drives me. And so that's why it's my career, because it's my passion. So I made it my career.
Yeah.
Question. Okay. So first of all, I don't know where people get this rumor that I love Wellesley. I mean, it's not like I have it tattooed on. I actually have to start off by admitting that I never wanted to go to Wellesley. I ended up there because my mom sent me there. And when I got the acceptance letter, it was on April 1st. I will never forget this because I remember thinking, like, is this a joke? I mean, this would be a really cruel April Fool's joke just to be like, hey, you're accepted. Psych. Um, but I got accepted and I was like, oh, that's cool. I wasn't planning on going there because it was all white. So you have all white, all women in the middle of nowhere. Perfect storm. There's no way I'm going to Wellesley. And at the time, I wanted to do. I was thinking I was going to be pre med. BU had the pre med, program where they combined the. That's where I wanted to go. And on top of that, the icing on the cake was that my best friend had also gotten accepted to BU. Okay. My mom was like, "Oh, that's cute that you think that," and she sent the like she declines all the schools which I was accepted, and she she sent Wellesley the little letter saying, "Yes, thank you. Here's a deposit," and sent my ass off. I started to really develop friendships. I started to appreciate the classes that I was taking, although some of them were quite challenging because I was pre-med against my will. Um, but I definitely experienced the loneliness, and again, all white, all women in the middle of nowhere. And that was really a struggle for this little Black girl from Queens. Um, my high school was maybe 24. My high school actually had up to 3,000 kids one time. And that's bigger than Wellesley's entire community. So that was, again, culture shock, dominantly white. And I was so far away from other people who lived and looked like me, right, from those neighborhoods. And we all know what Wellesley, how situated in the middle of this really rich, pristine white town. So it was hard for me to make those connections. It was hard for me to get to see, go to places and be around people that I wanted to be around. And then while I did make some lifelong connections and I have lifelong relationships, and I love that you could be in the middle of a store and you happen to see the W and or Wellesley on somebody's shirt and you're like, Wellesley, and like that's the instant connection. Like you don't need anything else. So I love that. But while I was there, I didn't feel very supported by the school, nor by a lot of my classmates. Not that they intentionally caused harm, but a lot of the stereotypes, a lot of the assumptions that people made, a lot of the microaggressions, a lot of asking me about my hair, asking me, oh, does your boyfriend go to college? A lot of those things where they would ask my white classmate, oh, where does your boyfriend go to college? I mean, so it was, and that irked me so much. And just kind of feeling like I was on display, so to speak, where and I felt like I had to be a certain way. In some instances, it was almost like I need to prove my Blackness. In other instances, it's like I need to prove I belong, that I can be white enough to be at Wellesley. And that was really, that was a challenge, for especially starting off 17 years old, far away from home, really the first time that I've been away from home for that extended period of time. And yeah, and it was also just very, very whitewashed. I mean, we didn't really talk a lot about race relations in class. I mean, unless I was taking an Africana Studies course, of course. But the courses, that there wasn't really a lot of discussion about that. And the microaggressions would be so frequent because even though Wellesley had that multicultural requirement, yeah, all you have to do was take one multicultural course. And I took a couple of classes in, Africana Studies department, and that satisfied my multicultural component. So me taking classes about my own identity satisfied my multicultural experience. That didn't mean that my Wellesley siblings were taking the courses that we needed them to take in order to understand, the challenges that their siblings of color experience. And that's quite obvious if you've ever been on Community. Yeah, I didn't know that I would, but that I would find myself in this space. When I was at Wellesley, though, I did have a lot of questions about race. I was really trying to understand things like interracial relationships. I was trying to understand things like, like just racism. And I was trying to understand why my Wellesley siblings viewed me a certain way. Why did I view them a certain way? How is it that and I understood why, but I wanted to know why, if that makes sense, So when I would have a company over and he would come into the dorm, people pretty much assumed that he was my date. You know what I mean? And it's like, okay, but if it's a white guy that comes in, they don't assume that he's here to see me. So it's like, why is that the case? So there was all these questions that I really just about really like just the racial dynamics. And so I joined Common Ground, which was this this peer facilitation group talking about differences. We talked a lot about race, but it was just in general, like different issues surrounding identity. And then when my senior year, and actually it was Nikia Fortes, who's also now a member, doing work with WRJI. So she was a member of Common Ground. And I was like, oh, and when I saw her doing those things, I was like, that looks like a good idea. Let me, join them. And so I did. I joined because of her. And I really enjoyed those conversations. And I was starting to be able to, get other people's points of views and understand their perspectives. And then my senior year, I joined ICANN, which is Intercultural Awareness Now. I don't know when they stopped that particular organization, but that was specifically to hold conversations around like the multicultural, aspects about surrounding race and identity. And so that was during my Wellesley days, right? And I was a member of Ethos, but like not really. Like I didn't really do much within like the organization itself. But nonetheless, all of those experiences kind of shaped my thinking. And so when I left, and I started still kind of with that whole pre-med ish, and then found my way to public health, and then seeing again all the disparities that, and keep in mind, even before public health, I'm from Jamaica, Queens. I'm not saying that I'm from the gutter, but I would see crack vials on my street. I would see, like there's all of the issues, like they exist in my neighborhood, right? there's several of us who made it out of my high school and went on to do great things. There is a whole chunk of people not hunk, chunk. There's a whole chunk of people who amounted, and I don't want to say amounted to nothing. That's really elitist of me. But there's a whole lot of people who pretty much did no more than one would expect them to do. And everybody measures their own, success. They have their own yardstick by which they measure success. But if they had more options, would that still be the path that they took, right? And so all that to say is I knew that these things were existing, but wanting to understand more like why, how, what systems led to this. And because we didn't have those conversations in the classrooms, I had a lot of those conversations in the dorm room, around like the living room, over lunch. Sometimes it was with Wellesley classmates, sometimes it was with the dining hall staff. Sometimes it was with the people who cleaned the dorms. Do you know what I mean? So it was like, it wasn't, my education didn't only come from the classrooms, and it didn't only come from my classmates. It came from the entire Wellesley community, both faculty and staff, and right. And so when you think about Wellesley and the experiences that I had, contrast that with the experiences that my white classmates had. We were there the same exact time, right? We were there from, so class of 98, we were there from 94 to 98, even though I know I said I wasn't going to say those numbers again, but whatever. So we were there for the same 4 years. Some of us lived in the same dorms, but my experiences vastly different than their experiences. They seem to feel more at home than I did. And one thing that I really noticed when we started off, people would ask, oh, what made you come to Wellesley? And granted, my mom, that's the answer for me. Like, my mom made me come to Wellesley. But my classmates would say they felt excluded in high schools. As women and girls, they felt excluded. And so they came to Wellesley because it is a traditional women's college. And then the focus would be on, right? So this woman-centered space would put women first. And that was not my experience. Again, Jamaica Queens, I mean, I was in the honors class, but, there was like, I think there were about 45 students in the honors class out of a class of 600, for my high school year, 94, about 600 people in my graduating class. But within my homeroom and like those particular, like my English class and my social studies class, there were about like, 25 people there. Because the Gateway program, there was like 40 something people in the program, about maybe 4 or 5 of which were Black boys. And I think there were 4 Southeast Asian boys. That's it. So there was like 9 or 10 boys in the entire program. The rest were girls. So I never felt overlooked as a girl in my high school. In fact, I'm like, please don't call on me, because I didn't do the reading. Don't call on me. Damn it, they called on me, right? So I didn't experience that. So when I got to Wellesley, granted, of course, like you still become a little bit more emboldened and empowered, in this woman-centered space, me identifying as a woman. But really what Wellesley made me so much more aware of was my racial identity. Because I started to experience so many microaggressions above and beyond I had ever experienced before. And so just kind of seeing all these things, like how I ended up at Wellesley, how Wellesley ended up this still predominantly white space, the interactions that happened on community, the interactions that happened while I was at Wellesley, seeing what happened to our Wellesley siblings, like Zoe, what happened with Zoe Mungeon, class of 2011, and Dr. Julie Butler, class of 79, right? So seeing all those things, like it just pushes me. It just pushed me, and I developed this drive to kind of figure out how to stop it all from happening. Um, well, it's Wellesley, right? And even though it's not officially, a sub entity of the college, it's still these amazing Wellesley people, who have just it's Wellesley. I don't know how else to say it. It's Wellesley. Wellesley is a place that I love. It's come to be my happy place. I look forward to reunions every year. I crash other people's reunions. Because for somebody who didn't want to be at Wellesley my first year, you try to kick me out. Try your darndest to kick me out now. And then just working with other Wellesley alum who are passionate about the subject matter. And then because we're Wellesley, and Wellesley is everywhere. We're in Spain, we're in Japan, we're in California, we're in Brooklyn, we're in, Wellesley is everywhere. We're in finance, we're in law, we're in politics, we're in medicine, we're in, we're everywhere, right? And so this very concept that the founders, you and the other founders had, is by galvanizing the Wellesley community, which is everywhere. Like, imagine what could happen.
You could do, right?
Right. We could take over the world.
And make it just. And
yes.
Right.
Exactly.
Well, I really appreciate your time, but more than anything, I just love you and your energy and all the work you do to make WRJI, something important. And it's even more important in its potential than it is so far in its reality, which is pretty amazing already. So yeah, I thank you for sharing your energy and your insights with our public.
Of course. Thank you so much, Jess, for for even you and the others for starting it. And I know that we're running out of time, but I can't tell you how elated I was when I came into the dorm on my 20th reunion. We were in BB, and I saw the WRJI poster, and I was like, what's this? Like, I was like, wait, am I seeing this right? I was, and then there were all these different programmings and like during reunion, you're like, okay, am I gonna go to this one? I was like, nope, these are the ones I'm going to. Check.
That's really great.
It was like no contest. And then you notice I was at each and every one of them, and I had Lori and I went to, and so it really did, and it actually made me a little less cynical about the Wellesley community, because it's like, if it has to do with gender, oh God, yes, Wellesley is all over it. Women's rights and equal pay, and I'm not saying that those things aren't important, but gender equality, yes, Wellesley alums are fighting hard.
In the way.
Yeah, when it has to do with in some cases, when it has to do with orientation, when it has to do with race, no. But race is just this other thing that a lot of Wellesley alums don't want to touch. And sometimes they don't want to touch it because they don't know how to touch it. Sometimes they think it's too messy. Other times, they don't even think it's an issue. But it's something that needs to be discussed. And I was so glad that WRJI was like, you know what? Let's start having these conversations.
Right.